Let's now make a multi-band effect rack. I like to do this a lot with electric bass, so I've already got some electric bass loaded up here. Going to drag down a blank rack. And we're going to use EQ3 to isolate the 3 bands. You can see here that you can mute the different bands. We've got low, mid, and high bands. You can see these indicators that show whether there's any signal in that band or not. There's not much in the high band, so I'm going to bring the crossover frequency down. This is basically the threshold at which the signal will be split between the mid and the high bands. And this crossover is the split between the low and the mid band. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this. So I have 3 of these chains, 1 for each band. But I definitely want to have control over my crossover frequencies. So I'm going to map those to macros before I duplicate it. So we'll map that to 1, map that to 2, dial them back in. And now I'm going to duplicate it twice. So you can see that these new ones are already mapped. So that was just a little time saver to map them before I duplicated. I'm going to rename these Command R, low, mid, and high. And then I need to mute the bands to isolate them in each chain. Low, mid, and high. So as of now, we shouldn't really hear this rack doing anything. You might hear a little bit of character from the filter, but it's pretty close to dry. But now what we can do is we can start putting different effects and processing on the individual bands. So I'm going to drag some dynamic tube onto this mid band. That's pretty good. I think I really want to stack these though. So I'm going to hold down the Option key and I'm going to drag this over to duplicate it. 2 tubes in series. It's a little more like it. And this is just on the mid band. On the high band, let's do something else like, let's do some downsampling. Use the Redux device. So I could turn this up, but what I really want to do is use a compressor and really squash it. So I'm going to set this aggressively. Really get that digital fur out in the front. If I was letting the whole spectrum through here, you can hear how it's going to mess up my low end significantly. That is a cool sound, but it's not quite what I'm going for right now. What I do want to have is the low end to be fully intact, which it is. In fact, I'm going to throw a limiter on there and crush that in another sort of way. Really make that low end punch through. Turn this digital fuzz down a little bit. Maybe a little less mid-band here. And you know, I think I'm going to bring this crossover down a little bit so that some of that muddy range goes into the mid-band and gets driven with the tubes rather than crushed by the limiter. That's pretty good. Now, of course, I can hide the devices and the chains. And there you have your multi-band effect rack.